Now, the 2022 annual meeting of the African Export-Import Bank, AFREXIMBANK, officially kicked off yesterday in Cairo, Egypt. Hundreds of high-level banking, governmental, and international personalities are participating in these meetings. Boason Omofaye, a Rise Exchange anchor and business analyst, is covering that event, and he joins us live from Egypt. Good morning, Boason.
Good morning, Tudu. It's good to see you and the rest of the team.
Same here.
Well, how is it going there in Egypt? Today is day 3 of the AFREXIMBANK annual meeting 2022. What are the big issues, particularly with regard to intra-African trade and post-COVID-19 reality, and maybe perhaps, institutions, the role of institutions?
Well, Dr. Ruben and the rest of the team, today is going to be a whole lot more focus on how to leverage the power of African youth to mainstream them into the whole AFCFTA transition implementation process, which have now started. So there'll be a number of sessions today. In a couple of hours, I'll be sitting down in a session with Nigeria's Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, whom I met late last night. There's also the Minister of Information, Culture and Youth for Egypt, as well as for Cote d'Ivoire, former Finance Minister for South Africa, Ntlanhla, some others who are technocrats. So there'll be a lot of discussions about education that the youth need, the kind of business skills, professional skills they need. We've seen how the youths are doing so well across Africa in the field of music, fashion, entertainment. Now, the big story is how to move them into what you call industrial technology, virtual reality, how to make sure that the youths begin to go into more than just doing software, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So fintech is fine. How do they find finance? Where is the next level of entrepreneurship? How do they become part of intra-Africa trade? That will be most of the conversations that will be happening today. So if you're looking for the issues around youth and women, today is the main focus for that, and that is part of what we're looking at. Today there will also be a launch of the Africa trade report by AFREXIMBANK, which will happen in a couple of hours from now. So that will also begin to show how much AFREXIMBANK has been able to do in terms of trade intermediation, trade finance across Africa. We'll hear some numbers as well as some outlook from this special financial institution here based in Cairo. Back to you.
It's also really interesting that AFREXIM is able to boast of how quickly they were able to rally and provide that $2 billion guarantee facility so that African countries could get the COVID vaccine. How much has been said in terms of health care provision for Africa at this conference?
Well, health is wealth, as you know. We all need to be healthy. A very healthy population is a productive population. So that goes without saying. So there will be there's a whole lot of conversation around what the spend will be. So Dr. Benedict Orama, yesterday at the opening plenary with the president of Egypt, His Excellency President El-Sisi, talk about the need to strengthen African institutions such as the AFREXIMBANK to do a whole lot more. $2 billion looks like a big sum of money on the table, but when you consider the healthcare structure and the entire ecosystem of healthcare across Africa, there's still a whole lot of issues to deal with. So there had to be interventions across the sovereigns, across countries. There has to be specialized interventions from institutions such as AFREXIMBANK, like the EFDB, like the Africa 50, and a lot of other institutions that are coming together to see what they can do to make sure that Africa has what we call the right and appropriate response mechanism that can hit the ground running, because no one knows when the next global pandemic will happen, where it's going to pop up on the planet, no one knows. So Africa needs to be prepared, and that is what AFREXIMBANK and the team here and the delegates and participants are also talking about.
Are they talking about possibility of championing trade? Because inter-Africa trade is still a big problem. You know, less than 3% threshold compared to other continents in the world. And this is something that will be coming up as we start to evolve with the new, AFCTA regulations and the likes. Is there any big talk about that in the room today, Boason?
Well, we're coming from what you can call ground zero, in a manner of speaking, if you talk about global trade. And just as we're putting the AFCFTA together under the African Union and its institutions, then you've got the COVID-19 pandemic, then you've got the Russian crisis. So we're taking off with the AFCFTA just before the global crisis turbulence happened. So there's a whole lot of trying to go through this implementation and transition phase. That is how it's being discussed here. And that's why the whole conversation is bringing women and youth into it, because the whole AFCFTA is not about the multi-billion dollars global enterprises across Africa. It's a whole lot more about middle, small, and micro enterprises at the bottom of the pyramid, a very huge informal economy across Africa that needs to be carried along. This is where the productive energy, the entrepreneurial spirit of Africans are really located. So this conversation is coming down a little bit more from that high level into the bottom ground, and that's what Kanayu Amani, who is the managing director of the Inter-Africa Trade Fair, spoke about on one of the panel that has the Commissioner of Finance for Bayelsa State and Commissioner of Finance for Niger State. And they're talking about how to begin to bring in the subnational state governments and local governments into the conversation around the AFCFTA. So it's not just about this big conference, but the AFCFTA structure and implementation process is now beginning to go down to those who do trade at the bottom of the pyramid. Look, Africa had had trade routes for centuries, as you all know, from the old Oyo Empire to the Mali Empire to the Trans-Sahel intra-Africa trade between the north and the south. But then this has to be resurrected. But we need technology, we need the youth, we need a new innovative thinking of how to be productive. And trade amongst ourselves, not just goods, but also services across borders. So integration, collaboration, cooperation is the way the sovereigns are having the conversations here between countries, because no single country can do it alone. Regions will have to do it together. Cross regions will also have to do it all together. So if you look at DR Congo, for example, which is the third most populated country in Central Africa, now becoming a member of the East African community, joining Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, becoming part of the East African bloc. Look, the old order is beginning to give way. Morocco has been looking for a way to join the ECOWAS community. That is where the new vision, that's the new direction for Africa. Open up the whole space and level the whole playing field, remove the barriers to trade, to goods, movement of persons, visas, whatever. Have a common African passport and African visa, then all things would also be well. But again, these are some of the roadblocks that need to be taken care of. Back to you.
Okay, quickly, Boason, could you give us an idea of Nigerian participation at that meeting? You mentioned earlier on that you cited the Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Are there other Nigerians there? And, you know, how are we represented? Who and who have you seen, apart from the Minister of Information?
Well, he will be speaking at a very major panel at about 1:30 local time here in Cairo. Yesterday, I just spoke about the Commissioners of Finance for Bayelsa and Niger State. I just saw a number of other delegates from the banking space, without mentioning names like First Bank, for example. I've seen a number of other delegates. Wale Tinubu of Rwanda was on a panel yesterday. Tony Elumelu was on a panel with Benedict Obrama and Ahmed El Sawedi, who is the founder and group CEO of El Sawedi Electric, looking at energy infrastructure and doing more for the youth and bringing them into the conversation, doing more innovative and creative way to support the youth. That was part of the session. Then you've got Ahmad Rabiu, who is the chairman of the BOA Group, also spoke on food sustainability as part of handling the issue of insecurity. We had an exclusive interview with him yesterday, which will be going on the channel as well. So there are quite a number of Nigerians. You have the founder of Terra Culture also going to be, Austin Peters, will be on one of the panels speaking also today. So quite a number of very big Nigerian representation. The head of the NSIA, which is Nigeria's Sovereign Investment Authority, Uche Oji, was having conversations with AFREXIMBANK for another funding facility, which Tony Elumelu, the Hess Foundation chairman, Hess Holdings and Tony Elumelu Foundation yesterday, says we'll be making some announcements today. So we're expecting some of these announcements to happen moving forward.
Thank you very much, Boason.
Dr. Ruben.
Thank you very much.